Well, in studio now, I'm joined by Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, Ambassador Amina Mohammed. For more on this, thank you very much for making time for us tonight. You raised your eyebrows when you saw the idea of the story, Good Luck Goods. Are we expecting Good Luck Goods?
Well, we're expecting to work on a few deals together that are good for both Kenya and Nigeria. So maybe it should be called the Kenya-Nigeria goods or the Nigeria-Kenya goods, not Good Luck Goods.
Okay. Well, I mean, what are we really expecting in terms of trade ties? What are we expecting from Nigeria?
Well, it's going to be the first time in our history that we actually have Nigeria-Kenya Business Forum. So it's historic. We're expecting about 100 businessmen from Nigeria. It's not a small number. It's businessmen and women, actually, from Nigeria. And they will be coupled by almost the same number of businessmen and women from Kenya. So we're expecting that they will be able to interact, to discuss areas of potential opportunities. They will also be able to look at the challenges that have stopped them from doing better in the past, and see whether they can actually agree on what needs to be done. We're giving ourselves the next 5 years to see whether we can actually grow our trade beyond where it stands now. As was said actually earlier in your report, the trade is in our favor, the balance is in our favor. We have had actually better days than today, because in 2010, our exports to Nigeria stood at 3.1 billion. Now they're at 2.9, so there's been a drop. And we need to understand why this has happened and what we need to address this so that we even are able to grow our trade faster.
One of the things I read or picked out after the press conference today that you had, press briefing, was about really related to the problems Kenya, with all due respect to Nigerians, has been having with Nigerians. Especially, we know very recently we had some strained relations as regards to the Chinedu saga. How are you working towards resolving such issues with them?
We did not have any strained relations, actually. We had an issue that we addressed together. And we, as I said today, we look at this issue, from the same angle, actually. And we intend to address this in a structured manner. We will be entering into agreements on one on narcotic drugs and the other one on immigration matters. And basically, this is to ensure that we have frameworks within which we can work on issues like this when they arise, so that it's easier to deal with challenges when they arise, and also to be able to give proper access to those that are coming to conduct business in Kenya, and vice versa.
What are the specifics, especially on narcotics? We know there was a problem because there were some people who were deported before being taken to any court here so that it can decide whether they're deported or not. First of all, has Kenya changed that position of deporting people that are alleged to be engaging in drugs? And what are the specifics you're engaging with Nigeria with?
Well, first of all, we don't have a policy of deportation. These were isolated incidents, and we discussed them.
This was a decree made by the president.
That's
President
correct.
Kenyatta, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But it was an isolated incident. It wasn't. It's not something that we engage in on a daily basis.
So it's not something that will be done. This was for the 3 people who were deported only.
Absolutely, and we did not have. There were not 3. There were, probably about 5. To different parts of the world. But the reason why this happened was because these were cases that had just could not be handled actually just by us. We needed to make sure that we had the other countries on board, and we did. We had consultations. We agreed on how it was going to be done, but we did not have a framework. And I think that made all the difference, because when you have a framework, then you actually know what steps need to be taken when. But in that case, we were actually very lucky because of the consultations that we had at different levels. We were able to resolve this very amicably. And there were no strained relations because we actually were talking throughout, and we continue talking.
Right.
And we agreed on what measures needed to be put in place, and how we were going to handle this and how we were going to resolve it. We also had a visit to Nigeria immediately after that. Right. Attended a conference and an official visit of 1 day. During that visit, we signed an agreement that we had been working on even as the deportation process was ongoing. So the relations were not strained at any moment.
Right. I'm going to take you back to the framework you're talking about. You're talking about. What are you saying then to Nigeria as regards to narcotics? So what is Nigeria saying to Kenya?
Well, it's an agreement that we're going to sign.
Are there any specifics? That's what I'm asking. What is?
Absolutely, there's specifics. There's specifics on what needs to be done when we stumble across cases such as the ones that we had.
Yeah. So
what are the steps? What are the steps? Yeah. How do we start the process off? We initiated by having a discussion with the High Commission here. Sending in a note explaining what was happening. Within a very short time frame, the High Commission would interview the suspect, and then we would agree on a modus of transportation, right? So that we're able to transport them on commercial flights, for instance. And if not, if we feel that we need to have special flights for them, then it would be arranged between the two governments. In some cases, we would pay for the flights. In other cases, they would. And this would apply to citizens of both countries. We'll be able also to put in place measures of determining nationality, so that sometimes they're mistaken nationalities. Somebody would claim to be a Kenyan when they're not, or a Nigerian when they're not. So we're putting in place measures that would actually determine that.
When all this happened, many, especially critics, were going back to Kenya's foreign policy and how much time it took. Of course, with all due respect to the efforts that were being put by Kenya and the Nigerian government, how much time it took to negotiate the Kenyans to come back and the whole problem to end. Again, many would ask about Kenya's foreign. First of all, do we have a foreign policy, or do we still work with what many have been saying since time immemorial? All we know is about Kenya's foreign policy is good neighborliness. So do we have a foreign policy?
We do. We have a foreign policy, but let me go back to the length of time it took. Negotiations are very sticky issues, right? And negotiations can take very, very short time, but they can take a very long time as well. In fact, just in the whatever of things, in the scheme of things, this did not take long at all. It could have taken much longer, because you continue negotiating on how this should be done, on what needs to be done next time, on what needs to be done even in terms of the the properties and things like that. So they take a long time, and so the time frame actually that this took was not long. It was appropriate. I think that the media got a bit impatient. And
media,
so
why would you want to say the media and not Kenyans? Because it was coming from Kenyans
quick
as well.
Results, and with negotiations you cannot have that. You can't have your cake and eat it. So you just need to keep working at it until you get it right. And I think we did get it right, and that's why now we can have a proper framework put in place, one that we have developed together, and one that we agreed to and will append our signatures to.
We're talking about the Kenyan
foreign policy. It exists. It exists, and it's not just good neighborliness. In fact, now the emphasis is much more on economic diplomacy, on making sure that we can leverage our relations with countries to increase the flow of investments into Kenya, to ensure that we expand the markets for our goods outside Kenya, to see whether we can increase the volume of tourists that are coming to the country, to make sure that the advantages that we have, the comparative advantages, Kenya is a hub. It's also a center for financial services, health services, educational services, and other services as well.
Is this something that has been existing? You found it there, or it's a new thing?
Well, actually, it's something that has been developed over a period of time. We are putting it now.
You're putting it up now?
No. It has been developed over a period of time. What we're actually doing now is putting the finishing touches to it. But this existed before, and that's why we had commercial attaches.
How much does
embassies.
How much does it I'm sorry, because we're really running out of time. How much does this incorporate public participation?
Well, it does, because any policy framework that we put in place has to be put through the rigors of stakeholder participation, stakeholder consultation. We get feedback from them. Not apart from the foreign policy document that we prepared, we've also prepared a diaspora policy, for instance. Right. And for that, we even had input from the diaspora, from the US, from the UK, from other countries where we have a Kenyan diaspora of significant size. Right. So no, this has to all go through stakeholder participation and consultation, and we actually enrich it by the feedback that we get.
We still haven't appointed ambassadors, have we?
We have ambassadors serving.
We have serving ambassadors, but
Absolutely.
we're expecting new ambassadors.
We're expecting to replace those that have been that have completed their terms of the tenure in the missions that they've
have
served.
already completed.
They've completed
The
and they're back.
Yeah, why has it taken so much time?
It hasn't taken time at all because they've just been recalled. Some of them have just reported, and we're preparing the agreement for those that will replace them. So it hasn't taken time at all. Remember that this administration has been in place for just over 100 days. And therefore, in fact, the problem would have been if we rushed into it and recalled everybody without, looking at their terms of service, looking at the contracts they entered into, looking at whether they had served for the 4-year term that they expect to serve, and all that. Right. I think that nobody should be disadvantaged. Everybody should be given the proper time to finish what they were doing, right. And to be recalled at the time that they should be. So there was no blanket recall.
So when are we expecting, very briefly, when are you expecting to have
new ambassadors? Well, we prepare the papers and we send them out to the governments of the countries of accreditation. They take their time. We do not rush them. They look at these papers, and then as soon as they give us the agreement, the ambassadors then,
so there's no definite
leave.
time now.
They can't be a definite time because it doesn't just depend on Kenya.
Yeah, very briefly again, MPs are currently, a section of MPs are currently saying Kenya should withdraw from the Rome Statute. I don't know what your department has to say about that.
I think that we have 3 arms of government, and each one is independent of the other. Right. Now, the MPs have asked to discuss this issue. I think we should allow them actually the space and the time to do that. The decision that they will make will be then submitted to the other arms of government to look at. And so basically, I don't think that it's something that we should be discussing. We should allow the MPs to have their say. We should not assume that we actually know what's going to happen. Right.
Many have been saying, critics looking at Kenya's foreign policy and the first 100 days or so, or even months of the Jubilee government, some are saying Kenya is looking east. Is that the case, really? And what are the relationships Kenya has with the traditional Western allies?
Actually, most of these countries are traditional allies. Most of them are traditional allies. We had relations with most of these countries even before independence. China, for instance, we had relations with China before independence. Right. They recognized Kenya 2 days after independence. It's not a new relationship. It's not a new relationship with any of the other countries as well. We've always had relations with China. But again, we're looking to increase investment. We're looking to open markets, new markets. Right. We're looking to ensure that we increase the number of tourists, and wherever we can find that, we actually must go.
What about, I'm asking currently, the relationship of Kenya and the Western nations?
It's good.
And bearing in mind, in fact, I would want to know what you think of the trip that US President Barack Obama made. Of course, Kenya was not in his itinerary. Absolutely. But of course, they said again, it was not the right timing, they were very blank about it, saying having the president and the deputy president as suspects at the ICC.
You know what? I think every country has a right to make decisions like that on their own. And I think I wouldn't really question the reasons why the US skipped Kenya. But I can tell you this for sure, and this is bankable, that we have excellent relations with the United States. They're not at one level. They're at different levels. They're complex relations, and we'll continue to have such deep relations with the US because we've had that, and there's no reason to change it. In fact, we're hoping that in the areas, right, where the relations were not fully developed, that we will enhance those, we'll develop them more. But we have, the US has been a traditional ally of Kenya. I mean, we've collaborated in many areas, in the social sphere, in the economic sphere, in the security sphere, in the political sphere, and that has not changed.
Well, finally then, we had an incident a while back of an alleged hit and run by a US diplomat. Where are we right now? The last time we heard from the Foreign Affairs docket was that they are pursuing the diplomat who we gather already went back to the US.
Yes, he did.
What is being done about it?
He did. We've had consultations, we've had discussions, we're waiting for the investigations to be completed. As soon as we get the report, we will take the next step. But we have a full understanding. As soon as the investigations, I can't determine when the investigations will be completed.
Is anybody in touch with the family of the deceased?
Yes.
From the Foreign Affairs Ministry?
Yes, we're in touch with the family, and we're not the only ones who are in touch with the family. Others are in touch with the family as well. But I can tell you for sure that we've had meetings with the US Embassy. We've had very good discussions, very productive discussions. We've agreed we'll cooperate fully on this issue, and we just need to wait for the outcome of the investigations. As soon as that is done, you'll see what will happen.
Okay, we'll be holding you accountable to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Amina Mohammed, who's the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, thank you so much for making time for us. We'll take a short break now. We'll come back with business news.